Hi, everyone. I would like to welcome you to today's MDE's Accelerated Learning Fall Webinar Series. My name is Beth Hill, and I'm from the Michigan's MTSS TA Center. Today, Leisa Gallagher and Lauren Kazee from Michigan Department of Ed will be presenting Integrating Social, Emotional, Behavioral, and Mental Health Supports to Promote Acceleration. They will be telling you more about themselves as they start their presentation. Their PowerPoint will be available as well as recording of today on this webpage. I put instructions in the chat of how you can access it. It is up there already. I will be monitoring the chat and sending your questions to them, and they will answer questions along the way, and we'll take more questions at the end if there's time. Please watch for the evaluation in the chat at the end of the session also. Your feedback is so valuable to us. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to Lauren and Leisa.
Good afternoon. I'm Leisa Gallagher. I'm at the Michigan Department of Education, and I work in the Office of Health and Nutrition Services in the School Health and Safety Unit. I have the great joy of working with Lauren Kazee. We are supporting social emotional learning in the state, and in addition to that role, I play supporting the Interconnected Systems Framework model demonstration. So those two hats are really important to integrate, and we'll be talking about that for the next 90 minutes. Lauren?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And yes, my name is Lauren Kazee, and I do some contract work for the Department of Education, and I get the pleasure of working with Leisa Gallagher as we tag team to help schools across the state of Michigan around their social and emotional learning implementation. I also have a contract with DHHS and oversee some of the work with the 31N budget line items, so supports to ISDs around student mental health. I work with Scott Hutchins and Chris Robinson. And then I also have a part-time job with Trails out of the University of Michigan. It's another school mental health program, so they are working with ISDs as well in different districts around student mental health. So I get to chase people all around the state of Michigan doing all sorts of good work or trying to support youth. But today we are here to talk about SEL, and we are so grateful for this opportunity. This platform is new to us. We've practiced and practiced and practiced just so that we could be perfect for you today, but we'll cross our fingers that happens. So just bear with us as we are learning a new system after all this time. Who knew that there would be another new system out there? But here we go. So we hoped to start our time together with you today just to do a little fun bingo around social emotional learning. Those of you who have potentially been with us before know we like to try to keep things as interactive as possible, even in this virtual setting. So even though we can't see the chat, Beth is going to share with us, if you could put in the chat the emotion that you're feeling right now as you're starting this session at the end of a work day.
So mine would be A4, proud.
And I am, why is excited not on here? Well, I'm making my own. I'm A5. I'm excited. I need to add excited on here.
I think it's D1.
Happy? Oh, wait. Oh, there it is. You're right. Yes. Thank you, Leisa. D1. I didn't even have to add. Yes, D1. Thank you so much. This is why I need you in my life, Lise.
So C3, which would be hopeful, and D2, which would be tired. Yeah, it's the end of the day. Lots of hopefuls.
Great.
And there's a happy, which is the ringtone for my daughter's cell phone when she calls me.
Oh, that's good. So yes, well, hopefully, even though you're tired, we hope to keep this energized and keep you engaged for the next hour and a half. So thank you for playing that game with us. And what the intention behind our SEL bingo is to help you to kind of think about how that emotion can impact the way that you would process. So we wish that we could have some more conversation around this, But if you are coming in hopeful or happy or excited, then chances are you're able to kind of lean in and you're able to gather the information. Sometimes it's more challenging if you're just so exhausted. It may be hard to keep attention or to be able to focus. And so it's just important for us to be mindful of where we are and how we're feeling, because that can absolutely impact the way that we're able to gather information that's being presented to us. Just like students in a classroom, if they're coming in hungry or anxious or depressed, it's hard for them to be able to pick up the things that are being laid down for them. So thank you for playing along, and I'm going to pass things over to Leisa.
Thanks, Lauren. This webinar got started because the Department of Education wanted to lean into accelerated learning rather than the temptation that educators might have to look at remediating learning. And we want to lean into acceleration learning. We thought it was important to make the case that the conditions of learning that are so critical for any academic content are really based on a foundation of social and emotional learning, of positive behavior supports, and of school-based mental health. So this is part of a series that will send that message that how it is we all move forward, but we are making the case that these really critical, effective innovations, as the research will reference them, social emotional learning, positive behavior interventions and supports, and school-based mental health, we want to make a case for integration, and we want to make sure that there's an infrastructure that would support those practices. And Michigan is quite fortunate in that we have done a lot of work in the field to look at that house that those practices live in. We reference those as multi-tiered systems of support. That's the infrastructure. In our MyKIP system, we need to be able to hang these practices on an organizational design that helps educators feel like they're working with each other and that the system of supports is coherent and in a single delivery system. We think those conditions accelerate learning in and out of COVID. Our big ideas, next slide please, is that we want to talk about what foundationally needs to be in place to support all learning. And we think that social emotional learning should be explicitly taught to all children at Tier 1. We also know that school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports is a Tier 1 strategy, and that that work needs to be in place to accelerate learning. Children need to feel like they're in a safe, reliable, and predictable environment, and that's critical to squeeze out every instructional moment that our heroic teachers are providing. We believe that SEL and PBIS need to be integrated, and that when they are, it enables the ability to layer in mental health supports, school-based mental health supports. And we're going to reference that particular version of integrating mental health, school-based mental health into a multi-tiered system support. We'll reference that as Interconnected Systems Framework, or ISF. Those three dimensions, SEL, PBIS, and school-based mental health, fit within MTSS, and that gives us a balance so that we're not just focusing on the academic, but we're focusing on the whole child. That's why the title of the acceleration brief that we were responsible for is referenced as the accelerated learning with a whole child perspective. Lauren?
So thank you, Leisa. So just to chime in, these are some of the reasons we thought that it was important to focus on accelerated learning. And all of these, I think, are going to be like no-brainers for those of you who are in the field doing this work every single day. Just all of the chaos that is happening in our school systems, really happening in our world, because of COVID, the pandemic, all of the different social reckoning things that have happened over the summer last year, all of those iterations and events to ensure that, there's so much increase in anxiety, mental health challenges, all of the turnover with staff, all of the instability that is happening in schools, sometimes hybrid, sometimes, people are quarantining. I mean, there's just so many different facets happening that are competing factors in schools, plus then all of these different competing priorities. So it can just feel like a big mush pot is what I've been saying. Like there's just so much happening. And so we felt like it was super important for us to be able to help schools to think about, as they're wanting to focus on accelerated learning, that they're really thinking about the whole child, as all of these have impacted the environment in which students are learning and staff are able to teach and work.
Lauren, we got Vanetta in the chat said that her emotion for processing information is high and that she's open to learning new social and emotional learning strategies for acceleration. We think that's really exciting, that's why you joined us. And we believe as well that SEL strategies are going to help make learning easier and will strengthen the relationships in the school. The Department of Education has referenced often in the last few years the WISC model, whole school, whole community, whole child. And if you would look at the inner green ring, we know that the outcomes that we're all pulling towards is to make sure that in the unpredictable times that Lauren just referenced, that we make sure we do what we can to support that children are healthy, safe, engaged, challenged, and supported. So it makes sense to lean into what our tier 1 supports are and to assure that social emotional learning and PBIS are there as a way of maximizing the impact of any tier 2 or tier 3 strategy that we have. The tendency sometimes in a period of volatility or stress is to add a new thing. And the message that we want to communicate is that really this is about going back to basics. And what we mean by going back to basics is lean in on your tier 1 strategies and make sure that those tier 1 strategies are implemented as intended so that you've got a strong foundation that will help you with the resilience of what you need as you serve your children. Strong tier 1 instructional practices are linked to layers of support that takes off the cognitive load. If you have a single system of delivery, if you have everyone pulling in the same direction for these benefits for children, then it takes some of the question and the doubts out of working from day to day in terms of your own learning and supporting the learning of your children. The house within which, or the infrastructure that really maximizes these effective practices, we are quite fortunate in Michigan to have identified the multi-tiered system of support practice profile. I'm on that MTSS leadership team, as is Steve Goodman, Kim St. Martin, Dr. Anna Harms. We have a variety of leaders across the offices of the department who are all collectively charged with making sure that we send the message that MTSS is the best way to sustain and create impact, positive impact for children. And so that critical component in terms of integration is a big message that we want you to walk away from is, do you have multi-tiered systems of support in place? And do you have a sense explicitly to know what that means? Next slide, please. So if we were to start at looking at the 5 components of multi-tiered systems of support, and we were going to start with the green wing of the pinwheel, the key words are, does your system have instruction, interventions, and supports in place? In terms of instruction, PBIS and SEL are not interventions. They're explicitly taught. PBIS to assure that no matter what setting you're in the school, there's school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports, that children know what the expectations are, and that they're clear as they move throughout the school and outside of the classroom. They are clear what's expected, and they've been provided guidance and teaching on how to make sure that they adhere to those expectations. If we were to move up to the blue pinwheel flag, this is about a tiered delivery system, and we've already referenced that PBIS and SEL are at tier 1, and the second tier might be targeted social skills groups, like reading feeling faces, or being able to make friends, or a social group that helps children make responsible decisions. That would be a tier 2 strategy, strategies that assure that families are understanding what's going on with their children and are clear how they can help at home. And then the top tier, the intensive tier, might be where there's the delivery of mental health services. So when we look at the practice profile, we're trying to show you where PBIS, SEL, school-based mental health fit within that tier delivery system. As we move then towards the orange pinwheel, you could imagine that as we focus on the non-academic side of the triangle, we look at the social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health of children. That's going to have some implications for that orange pinwheel flag that talks about team-based leadership. This would be a time to enhance that team, to assure that you've got SEL expertise, that you have PBIS expertise, and that you have school-based mental health expertise at the building level and at the district level. And then as we move towards the purple wing, a coherent system identifies data sources that give us the ability to know how we're doing in terms of SEL, in terms of school-based mental health, and in terms of PBIS. We don't want to look at behavior in isolation. If we have a coherent system that integrates these pieces, then you'd have data sources. A common data source to indicate whether children are experiencing mental health challenges might be a student survey, the MiFi, the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth at the middle school and high school. That might be a data source that would help a district determine the degree to which the dosage that's delivered of social emotional learning that enables school-based mental health, but also it gives direction to what kind of mental health services that district and those buildings might need. And then finally, we want to make sure that we have an early intervention process in our screening practices and a way to assess whether children are building those pro-social skills. So do we have some way of assessing the degree to which children can show proficiency in their SEL skills? Do we have some sense about whether or not they're able to demonstrate that they can meet the expectations through the positive behavior interventions and support system? Next slide, Lauren. So as we think about multi-tiered systems of support, and that as a critical component for accelerating learning, making sure that we have that strong infrastructure, part of our job today is to make sure that you know where to go for resources. We have an accelerated brief with a whole child perspective that's posted on the MDE website. We have a video that outlines the big ideas. We've got this webinar, but we also want to drive you back to the Michigan Department of Education website and look for accelerated learning as a search term, or look for MDE resources for MTSS, and you'll have the opportunity to learn more and check your system back home to see if it matches when people speak about multi-tiered systems of support. Does it match what is intended by multi-tiered systems of support? So if we look at these 6 boxes, We want to make sure that districts have access to the My MTSS practice profile, which tells if you're working a strong system, if you're participating, if you're using multi-tiered system support as your infrastructure, do you have a way to gauge whether or not MTSS is working as intended? And that practice profile provides you that support. If you feel like there are some gaps in the way that the district is describing multi-tiered system support, or that your building is working that out, the My MTSS Technical Assistance Center is the go-to organization to be able to help you strengthen your system. So that second block in the center, in the top row, technical assistance, you would click on that on the MDE webpage, and that would get you to the My MTSS TA Center. If you wanted updates about how districts are implementing multi-tiered systems of support, or different dimensions of MTSS, you would sign up for the newsletter. And often the field, depending on what part of your state you're in, or depending on what intermediate school district you're in, the state will have some particular questions that can be helpful to the rest of us in the state. And that FAQ document is updated on a regular basis. The resources for My MTSS can be content specific. And before we move to the next slide to talk more in detail about those resources, the Michigan Department of Education did a really brave thing. They decided to test the degree to which 2 ISDs in the state might explore supporting multi-tiered systems of support. I believe they started that in 2017, and they called that the transformation zone. So the 2 ISDs were Saginaw ISD and Lenawee. Those 2 ISDs built their regional capacity to support multi-tiered systems of support. And if you were to click on the transformation zone, you could read the report about how that work went and what their regional capacity assessment indicated after their work as a transformation zone. Why I say that's brave is often the Michigan Department of Education or other departments of education in other states try something out, but don't maximize the learning from what that attempt was. The transformation zone does that, makes very transparent how that work went, so that we can all learn from what Lenawee and Saginaw's experiences are. Next slide, Lauren. So if we were going to look for resources, I've already mentioned that there's a newsletter, but one of the resources that I appreciate the most is the catalog of supports. So that link will take you to all of the professional development that the My MTSS Technical Assistance Center delivers. Another resource that's offered is the Intensifying literacy instruction. And if you wanted to have constant updates in terms of what's going on with MTSS, you could sign on for email messages that would give you updates. Next slide, please. You can see that there's an early childhood MTSS webinar that folks could look at. What's most exciting in the last 6 months from my perspective is that there's fiscal guidance on implementing MTSS, which has come a long way in terms of how is it that we can appropriately use funds to be able to do what we need to do to serve children. That guidance was a cross-office effort, and we're quite proud of that guidance. Intensifying literacy, MTSS and state aid, and how does MTSS and the Michigan Continuous Improvement Program, how are those connected? So those are resources. If you're going to think about checking your system, those are all resources that would help you give the kind of details and maybe answer some of the really specific questions you might have in your local context. Next slide, please. So we're going to go from, an infrastructure and a way to make sure that we have a single system down to our first effective innovation, and that is positive behavior interventions and supports, known as PBIS. The big ideas of making sure at Tier 1 children are supported to demonstrate positive behavior is that the adults need to identify and define their behavioral expectations, teach those expectations, monitor whether children are behaving as expected, acknowledge and recognize a child's efforts, establish a continuum of responses for the adults that include teaching and reteaching, and use data for decision making. Those by now, PBIS in Michigan is mature, and we enjoy a national reputation for the quality of work that Dr. Steve Goodman and the My MTSS TA Center provide. Those are the big ideas of PBIS, and you can see that PBIS is meant to look at all the settings in a school. That's what they mean by school-wide. Next slide, please. If we were to think of teaching expectations and a behavior matrix, we're just thinking about positive behavior supports, then do children have a matrix that shows how they might be respectful, responsible, and safe in the hallway, in the stairway, at recess, in the cafeteria, in the bathroom, and on the bus? The behavior matrix might be something you're very familiar with. But if you look at the next slide, the integration that we're talking about would expand the behavior matrix to include a call out in the classroom for some of the internalizing or externalizing behaviors that children are experiencing. Children might be anxious or depressed. We are seeing an increase in anxiety and depression among children during the pandemic and during this time. So what we want to do is expand that behavior matrix to assure that there are social and emotional skills that are built into that. So if you look in the classroom, I'm going to assume that a classroom teacher has been explicit in her instruction of social and emotional learning. And then in the matrix, it's going to show up that when, in order to feel safer, I use a calming strategy, that there's been the thought that an adult taught that child how to demonstrate that calming strategy. So this is just a nice visual to be able to show that PBIS and social and emotional learning can work together, and you can see it in the behavior matrix that brings PBIS and social and emotional learning together. Next slide, please. The primary support for PBIS is the My MTSS Technical Assistance Center. So when we think about resources, you don't have to figure this out from a book. You can participate in the professional development and implementation supports that come from the My MTSS Technical Assistance Center. The TA Center provides not just their staff that can provide coaching and technical assistance to adopt positive behavior supports, but there's also the opportunity for us to participate in trainings like this, universal and targeted trainings, to be able to get oriented and to understand more about the connections for why positive behavior supports is so important. There's the TA Center also provides a data system. So anyone that is in active implementation for positive behavior supports has the ability to access the My MTSS data system to be able to use the data that's provided through the system to make real-time decisions. Next slide, please. One of the nationally recognized attributes of the My MTSS TA center is that they are so transparent and sharing in their materials. So if you were to go to the TA Center's website and you were to look at practices, and then you were to look up behavior, you would be able to see the content that's available as you think or consider about entering into a partnership agreement to be able to implement positive behavior supports. Next slide, please. So when we think about MTSS and we think about positive behavior supports and we put those things together and we know that we want social emotional learning and school-based mental health to be incorporated, this is a visual that might describe how we might do that. So let's start on the right-hand side of this slide. What is it that all children in the district are going to receive? And you'll notice at that tier 1, it says positive school climate and a sense of belonging, social emotional learning, school-wide positive behavior supports, and bullying prevention programs. So those are, that's a representation of what we've talked about so far. When this diagram was created, it didn't call out explicitly equity. And I'd like to take a minute to say that when we think about positive behavior intervention supports and we think about social emotional learning and we think about leveraging a single system of delivery, we also want to make sure that all of our work is supporting a child's identity, agency, and belonging, that the message that learning sends is that their family, their community, and they matter, and that PBIS and SEL will center equity. So while equity is not called out, we want to, in this presentation, make sure that we lift that up, that we want to center equity in all of our work. As we move up on the right side of the triangle and we think about those targeted interventions on the non-academic side, then we would think about making sure that there were academic supports, targeted and small group interventions. We've talked about a group that might help with anxiety, another group that might help with depression, another group that might help with relationships, another group that might help with decision making. Those are small group social skills that might be layered onto what all children are getting at tier 1. And then at the top of the triangle, there might be more intensive supports that we've talked about. As we move down, you see that there on the left side of the triangle is a call out to school and community providers, school employed clinicians, and community clinicians. As we said in the beginning, the interconnected system framework design talks about making sure that there's a single system of delivery known as interconnected systems framework, and that school and community clinicians work together within that multi-tiered behavioral framework to be able to make sure that we don't have what's called co-location. The community clinician is doing something separate from what the district or school leadership team is doing. In this way, we have a great example of how school and community clinicians, how SEL, PBIS, social skills training, and more intensive services work together in a system. Next slide, please. The other dimension of interconnected systems framework that is really critical is to make sure that we include on the front end family and community members as stakeholders. This diagram might look really differently if it was only about positive behavior supports. The acronyms are a little dicey in this diagram, so I'm just going to take a minute to explain. CICO stands for check-in, check-out. SAIG stands for Social Academic Instruction Group. FBA, Functional Behavior Analysis. BIP, Behavior Intervention Plan. WRAP stands for Wraparound Services. Those responses within Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 are expanded in our integration model that we're talking about, so that family and community members can support the child not just during the school day, but outside of the school day, and that community and school clinicians can expand the services they're providing not just to the child, but to the family. This is an example of how an integrated model might look differently than if you were just to look at positive behavior supports. If you wanted to know more about how interconnected systems framework delivers that a single system of delivery, how clinicians might work together, what kind of work has to happen so that everyone is part of the problem-solving team, my MTSS Technical Assistance Center has ISF as a model demonstration right now, and there are materials that are going to be provided so that as this work emerges, we can bring folks along. Next slide, please. Tammy Morrow and Sheila Williams-White are, I think, even on this day, providing a universal training on what is meant by interconnected systems framework so that we can build state capacity. The work's emerging, but you could imagine how children would be ready to learn if we make sure that we're coordinating with their social and emotional, their behavioral, and their mental health needs. Next slide, please. All these ways of working work in a shared cycle that's communicated so that children are more connected, that we use screening to identify children early so that as the concern that we all have about the mental health of our children, that can be identified soon, and that we have the resources and capacity to respond to that. We're all pulling in the same direction in terms of the support that we want to offer our children. We understand that this is about teaching and recognizing when children are trying to meet the expectations, recognizing their effort, and we want to monitor to make sure that the systems that we put in place are working for our children. Lauren, would you talk about the social and emotional learning part of this work?
Yes. Thank you, Leisa. I love how brilliant Leisa is and all of her experience around this interconnected systems framework and multi-tiered systems of support and PBIS. I mean, she just is a wealth of information, and to be able to help us pull all of those pieces together, I know can frequently be challenging sometimes for schools. As I've done work in schools around SEL, sometimes it can feel like there's so many different initiatives happening, and how does all of this work together? And so I'm excited that we're starting to really figure it out and integrate all of these important elements so that we can support students and staff in schools. So I am bringing you guys back to graduate school as we start on my portion of this presentation to help to kind of identify SEL a little bit more now that Lisa's done those other areas. And I want to start us with Maslow, which again, is, brushing off the cobwebs from way back when we were in school, but thinking about the intention and the purpose of being able to be thoughtful about how we get students to the place where they're motivated and ready to learn, which is ultimately what we want for students, for them to feel safe and motivated and ready to learn, to have their greatest experience academically. So when we think about Maslow's, and I know people talk about Maslow's versus Bloom, and that we want to, I think honestly, what it boils down to for me, Leisa said back to the basics, and I think what it boils down to for me is that we remember that we're all human. And I'm hoping that through this pandemic, that it is a reminder to us that all of the youth in our schools are human, that all of the adults in the school are human, and we all come to the building with stuff. And in order for us to have our greatest potential, whether that's teaching students or learning material, that we think about the fact that we all need to feel physically healthy, right? So again, that's been really elevated through all of this pandemic, but that we feel safe, that students, all of us, and not just students, but especially students, feel that they have this sense of belonging, that they're loved, appreciated, valued, wanted, all of those things that I know we look at through these different mental health and SEL and PBIS, that kids do better academically when they are feeling engaged in school, that they have this positive sense of self, that I am a reader, I am a learner, I can do this work. They have that stick-to-itiveness, and then they're motivated and ready to learn.
Lauren,
Yes.
Tara says amen.
Oh, thank you. High five. Or I guess I was 10, but thank you. Yeah. So in a truly safe school, we know that students feel like they belong, students feel like they are valued, they feel physically and emotionally safe. And I will also say that's what we want for the grown-ups in the school as well. And, I often say that if any of you follow Oprah Winfrey, she always talks about the fact that people want to feel like they matter. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. And so our mission, Leisa and I, and many of our colleagues at the department, is to ensure that everybody who is in a school building feels like they matter, and that they have value, and that they have worth. And so that, again, is, to us, part of the impetus of this work around interconnected systems and PBIS and SEL and student mental health or school mental health, is that students feel safe, teachers feel safe, educators, and that they feel like they have value and they belong. So now is my opportunity to show you a video. So everybody cross your fingers, because I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint. I'm going to attempt to share a video. And so everybody just put all of your positive energy to me as I do this, because I'm just going to believe that it's going to work. So I think I stopped sharing. Is that true?
Yep, it did.
Okay. Oh, I see everybody. Hello. Now I'm going to start to share again. Do people have their fingers crossed? That's what I need to know. Share audio. Here. Oh my gosh, I think I'm doing it. All right, Lisa, can you see it?
Not yet.
Oh, poop. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, no, it should be. It says it's sharing.
I can hear it.
You can hear it, but you can't see it?
I can't.
Can Beth see it?
Beth said we cannot see it, and she herself says she cannot see it.
This is what I was afraid of. I don't know what to do. You could hear it, but you couldn't see it.
Right. Share. Beth says, share your screen, Lauren.
I am sharing my screen. I am sharing.
Beth says, dang.
Let's try one more time. Okay, let's see. Choose what you want to share. I am choosing it, but it's not letting me choose. Let me try this. Let me try this. Okay. Any luck?
Michelle is saying, can you put the link in the chat?
I can put the link in the chat, but then Beth is going to have to share it.
And Beth says she will.
Okay. Then we can let everybody watch it for a minute and come back if they want to do that. I've done that before. I figured out the sound part. I just don't know how it worked when we practiced, but. Okay, so we can be quiet and let people, oh, he's saying give him a sec. Yeah.
I think we should give him 20 seconds.
Okay, I can't hear that, but I could see it.
Yep.
Aw, thanks everybody for being gracious with us.
It's got to be great. It's a servant.
Sitting on that darker bay, wasting time. Hey, Mr. Q.
Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom. No talking. Quietly.
Hey, Miss Merida. How you doing?
We need you inside.
How do you think that makes us feel?
I forgot my number.
What's your name?
Jordan
What's your last name?
Carter.
All right. Go ahead.
School is hard enough.
Come on in, sit down quietly at your desks, and begin writing.
This kind of stuff just makes it harder.
I said quietly, please. Who's talking? Is it you, Sophie? Don't let it be you.
Don't believe me?
Sophie.
Please just watch.
I'm not up here for me, I'm up here for you. Pay attention. Okay? Now somebody answer me. Somebody needs to answer me really fast.
Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, a teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
Moment by moment.
Miss McGarity, your student's behavior yesterday in the lunchroom, it was terrible. Next time, silent lunch.
Did you hear that? Stay in line and catch a bubble. I'm not playing.
If this is education, we're in trouble.
Bye, Miss McGarity.
Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. The way it is now, 2 of the 3 of us will never be able to really read. It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan. How you doing? Good.
Everyone we meet throughout our day can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great.
Hi, Jordan. Bye, Jason.
Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead and put your number in.
Talk with
I
us,
don't know my number.
not at us.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Teach us what we need to know.
good morning.
That's how we get smarter.
Well, good morning, Sophie, Janicia, and Jordan.
And when you talk with us and teach us, give us bigger and bigger words.
Now what I'd like you to do, children, is turn around and converse with your neighbor and discuss where the mother might have gone.
Words that we can use to read and understand,
She is prey for eagles, so she hunts at night.
and that will take us places we can never reach without you.
Remember, we're entering the learning zone. Now, how can we show our respect to the children and teachers who are working?
We can walk quietly.
Yes. Okay, kids, so what I'd like you to do is continue writing your narrative, documenting your emotions if you were the baby owl and your mother abandoned you in the nest.
What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best.
You would have stayed and assisted them in whatever they needed.
Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be.
Why would you want to silence us?
Thank you, Luke, for playing for us. So I know that people have seen this many, many times. I've seen it probably 1,723 times, but I still, and I'm not exaggerating, I still get goosebumps every single time. So Leisa and I love to share that video. We're wondering if there's any reactions from any of you. Beth has sent over a couple already, one from Tara, and one from Michelle. And so I know that's exactly right, Michelle, that it doesn't take long to greet kids by name and to have an impact. It does take a village, absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. So I think that video, even if you have seen it many times, it can be super powerful, and I think to see the impact that our words and our actions can have. The other thing that I love about that video is I feel like it's a pretty good example of how PBIS strategies and SEL strategies are brought together in a school setting. So I'm wondering if anybody who is out there can see any ways that had that same revelation, that they could see how PBIS and SEL came together in that video. There is not a secondary version, but let's do one ourselves, Alexis. You want to? Call us after this and we'll create our own, because several people have asked me about that, and I would love a secondary version. So let's make our own. I do have to say, one time when I shared this with teachers, one teacher said in front of all of her colleagues, so humbly, she said, "I'm that first teacher." And I just was moved by her vulnerability. But I think we all have time. We all have moments when we're the first teacher, right? And so I think, to be able to recognize that and have our own self-awareness, but to know that we can always do better. When we know better, we do better. Another Oprah thing. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, this time with the PowerPoint. So we know that's worked before. So, oh, lots of comments. Want connections at work? Yes, you're exactly right. Whoever said that, Bethany, maybe? Yes, I love you for that. The second video does make all the difference. Absolutely. Thank you for all your comments. I'm so happy there's people out there.
And Michelle Harmla, it's wonderful to see your name.
Okay. All right. Y'all see the screen? I mean, the PowerPoint? Lisa?
I'm ready to help you. Yep, and it worked.
Yay, that's what I needed. Thank you so much. Okay. So, and if we were together in a room, I would say, can somebody read this, please? But since we're in this virtual space, I will read it. And it says that if a kid doesn't know how to read, we teach them. And if a kid doesn't know how to do math, we teach them. If a kid doesn't know how to behave, and I know several of you out there said, we punish them or we discipline them. And that's exactly right, and exactly the right answer, and exactly the wrong thing to do. And so that is, again, where PBIS and SEL come into hand in hand, where they come in together. Is because if we, just like we want to teach kids how to read, and just like we teach kids how to do math, we also want to teach them how to behave. So again, another way that SEL and PBIS can overlap. For us here in Michigan, this is our social and emotional learning frame. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see orange and green and yellow, and those are the 5 social and emotional learning competencies that are nationally recognized, and I will break those down for you in the next slide just to talk about those for a moment. But we wanted to leave this here so that you could see that those 5 SEL competencies are also embedded within curriculum and instruction in a classroom setting. So teachers are able to think about ways while they're teaching their curriculum, math, science, English, social studies, they have opportunities to bring in some of these skill building lessons for students around those 5 competencies. Then we also see, just like with PBIS and school-wide mental health, that SEL is also a district school-wide building, a school building district-wide initiative as well, that we don't want it just to be, every now and then in, the 3rd grade classroom and the 5th grade classroom and maybe in all the 9th grade classrooms, but that it really is a thought through, thorough, system-wide effort. And then we see that it also is embedded within the home. Families are engaged, caregivers are engaged, and even in the communities. And we have a couple districts in Michigan that have done this work long enough that over the years that has expanded out into that home and community outer circle, where the local businesses are getting involved and parents are involved in great and authentic ways. On the other side of the screen, we also wanted to illuminate for you those 3 tenets of our representation for SEL. When we think about, these 5 competencies, again, that I'll get into, these 3 tenets are really these overarching components that we want to also elevate. So helping students to think about and feel confident in their identity, whether that is, again, like I mentioned before, I'm a reader or I can do math, and I used to, my daughter started school with an IEP, and math was one of her most challenging subjects. And so I did Jedi mind tricks with her, right? Like, you love math. Math is your favorite. You can do math. Math is, whatever. And now, even though she's an adult and out of school, if you said to her, like, hey, what was your favorite school subject in school? She'd say math. because I did Jedi mind tricks, right? I wanted her to believe that she could do it and have that sense of self. So identity, right? And that could be racial identity. It could be your orientation, anything, how students see themselves. We want them to feel safe and supported in that. And then also their agency, right? Their ability to stick to it, that grit, the perseverance that they need, especially with content state standards at times. It can be super challenging, and especially if you've been remote learning for a year and a half. So to have that sense of agency, that they know they can do it. And then finally, that sense of belonging, which we just saw demonstrated in that video, where kids, again, feel like they are wanted, welcomed, have value, have worth, that they feel engaged in school, because we know when that happens that they do better academically.
Lauren?
Yeah.
Stephanie wrote that just in response to the wonderful things you're sharing, that we need to set children up for success and equip them with the right tools, like a life jacket, instead of waiting for a crisis, like throwing a life ring when someone's already in the water. And it's just a beautiful way of connecting to the social and emotional learning competencies.
What a great analogy. Stephanie, I hope you're okay if I steal that and take it on the road with me, because that's a beautiful analogy. I love that. Yes. Here's a life jacket versus a life preserver. Yes, thank you so much for that. Great analogy. So here are the 5 nationally recognized components of social and emotional learning. These are also the ones that we have adopted here in Michigan. And the first one is self-awareness. So as we're thinking about embedding these skills or helping students, we're teaching them to read, we're teaching them to do math, we're teaching them to behave. These are some of those skills that we want students to be able to develop and to possess. So self-awareness, kind of like that bingo game we played with you at the beginning, right? Checking in, how am I feeling? Am I tired? Am I happy? Am I excited? Am I hopeful? Am I afraid? So helping students to have the language to be able to identify their feelings, even the things that they're interested in, their strengths, things that their areas of growth. We also then want students to be able to manage those emotions. So they may be able to say, like, oh, I'm really nervous about this test. And sometimes kids maybe are so nervous that they act out, they get sent down to the office, or some kids may be so nervous they don't even come to school, right? So we want to help kids to be able to manage those emotions. Or it could be excitement, right? Like the holidays coming, we're getting, a couple days off of school, and they could be super excited about that. Or kids may be dreading that because they love being at school and they don't want to be home. So there's all sorts of emotions that kids can experience. We want to be able to help them to manage and regulate those emotions in a healthy, productive way. Then social awareness is, again, thinking about how they fit into the bigger realm, right? So maybe not everybody in their classroom looks the same as them. Maybe there's different skin colors. Maybe there's different faiths. Maybe there's different values or beliefs, or maybe, some have different experiences than others. So being able to try to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, helping them with empathy, which is something that we need in our country right now more than ever before, probably. But again, helping them to learn how to accept other people, even if they don't necessarily agree. And that's okay. We don't all have to agree with everybody on everything, but we do need to be kind and nice and learn how to interact with each other in a positive way, which leads us then to relationship skills, right? So how do we build healthy relationships where there's communication skills, listening skills, body language, learning how to read other people's intonations, and all of those things. We want students to be able to build healthy, positive relationships with each other, but we also want there to be healthy relationships between staff and students, and also staff and staff, which is my opportunity now to get on a little soapbox and say that as we are helping students to develop these SEL skills, we also want to ensure that the adults are modeling these behaviors as well. And so my little go-to is, we don't want to demand what we can't deliver, so that the adults in the building should be being the example and demonstrating these skills to students, because they are watching you and they are looking to see how you interact and how you respond with your peers or with other students, or in other situations where you maybe have to regulate your own emotions, because that happens sometimes too. And then finally, and a soapbox. Then finally, responsible decision-making. So helping kids to think through those if-then, right? As those brains are being developed, from the feeling part to the executive functioning thinking part, that we want them to be able to make healthy decisions for themselves. If I choose this behavior, then I can expect this outcome, a consequence, a reward, that we are helping them to make some good ethical and sound decisions. So what, right? What we know is that when schools embed SEL with fidelity, that the very things that we want to see happen in schools happen, right? So those increases in desired behaviors, whether it's connection to school, it's interpersonal relationships, it's all of those pro-social behaviors, engagement with school, and then also academic achievement, those things increase when schools have embedded SEL. Then the opposite is also true. So those behaviors and challenges that we don't want to see in schools also decrease. Excuse me. So the conduct problems, those frequent flyers that are coming into the principal's office because they're having so many issues in class, we see those things decrease. That angst that kids are feeling, especially right now, again, with the circumstances of our world, that I almost said state, but it's a lot bigger than that, that we are seeing those anxiety, the depression, those symptoms, also all of that emotional distress also decreases. Plus, then the added benefit of drug use decreases. And there's also studies to talk about the financial impact when schools embed SEL, that it can save $11, on average $11 per student when embedded with fidelity, if those money saving strategies are of interest to you. And again, these are things that, when we think about PBIS and we think about student mental health, again, we want pro-social behaviors through PBIS. We want decrease in anxiety and depression with student mental health and supports around that. And so when we think about SEL, again, it feels like there's so much overlap, but there's so much compatibility between these different initiatives. We wanted to provide just a quick snapshot of what our competencies look like in the state of Michigan. So we are the first state who took early childhood SEL competencies and connected them to the K-12 competencies that were developed. We started writing these in about 2013, 2014. We took those 5 different elements that I just talked about. They're on the left-hand side of the screen. And we established different indicators and benchmarks and strategies for teachers to use in the classroom. There's various age bands. So we have the babies, right? The infant toddler. We have pre-K, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12 age bands. And under each of those age bands are these indicators. Under each indicator are strategies and benchmarks. And all of these competencies and supports are on our website, which we give you the link to on the last slide. Is there a comment?
Yeah. How did you know? So Michelle is asking if there's a way that we can link the return on investment literature, the $11 comment. Is there a way you can share that source? We can follow up afterwards, but the value added of making the investment in social and emotional learning competencies is something that's of interest to our audience.
Yeah. So Beth, when you send these slides out in the recording, I can get you that. I'm 98.9% sure that it's on the Castle website, because that's where I'm going to go to get it. But we can get that link.
In addition, Lauren, there's a beautiful comment about the fact that in an IEP meeting that these social and emotional learning competencies are referenced as a goal and objective. And that makes sense.
Is that somebody from Macomb?
Alexis wrote that in the chat.
Okay, so Alexis and I are going into business together because we got to do a video and also that IEP comment. But yes, I worked with some school social workers in Macomb County several years ago to come up with some SEL strategies for IEPs. And I was just asked by somebody in Livingston County last week, actually, if I could work with them to kind of help them. And I was like, calm. But yes, I love that people are thinking about how to embed SEL into IEP. So thank you for that comment, Alexis. Appreciate that. So I will tell you in all transparency that these competencies is like a 60 some odd page. I think it's 62 pages. And when we finally painstakingly were finished writing them, it took us several years, and there was input from numerous people, like over, I don't even know. There was tons of people from universities and every office in the department and other states. And I mean, it was just, and then I took them around and did a focus group of different educators in seven different locations to over 70 different administrators and teachers and classroom folks. And, you know, what I knew about teachers even before the pandemic, both of my parents were educators. I was married to a teacher for 25 years, that people don't have time to look at a 62-page document, right? So even though it was a labor of love and it's out there and people can access it, sometimes, you know, we just don't have the time. We have the will, but maybe not the reality to be able to look at this. And so the feedback from the educators that we worked with on this document was for us to embed it into the school improvement framework, or the district improvement framework at the time. So the SIF and the DIF. And so we did that. We went back and we figured out, how do we embed social and emotional learning into the school improvement framework process? And there's a guidance document also on our website that helps educators and administrators to be able to do just that. Once that document was done, in true form, Michigan switched and went to the MyKit process. But God bless Leisa. She was there to advocate. And so because of her championing our efforts, there is an SEL strategy bank in the MyKit process. And I did just talk to somebody at the local district level last week or maybe 2 weeks ago who has been using and embedding SEL into their MyKit process, which brought tears to my eyes. So just so that you know, we have been able to provide some resources around SEL for your school improvement process planning. And again, you know, Lisa can give you more information about that, as this is much more of her wheelhouse, but I'm excited to know that there are resources out there so that you can put this in your school improvement plans.
And Lauren, I put in the chat, Aperture Education had a fact sheet on the return on investment for SEL, and it was Columbia that identified the 11-to-1 value. For every dollar you spend on SEL, you save 11.
Thank you. Behind the scenes doing all the work. So the other resource that we wanted to let you know about, because of all of the resources that Lisa shared, this one around social emotional learning that I think actually is probably maybe one of the most helpful to folks in the classroom, is that we provide social emotional learning competencies crosswalk with all of the academic content. So for K-12, for math, science, social studies, and ELA, there's a link again on the last slide and in our resources for you that helps all of those content area standards to be crosswalked with those 5 competencies that I just walked you through. So again, if you're a science teacher, 8th grade science teacher, and you've got these things that you have to teach per your, contract, here are ways that you can embed social emotional learning competencies into those lesson plans. So again, my favorite example is a 9th grade English teacher who was part of the focus groups for us years ago said, I could easily do these competencies as I'm doing my Romeo and Juliet lesson. So there are ways that teachers can not only explicitly teach this in the classroom, like Lisa said at the beginning of this presentation, but also embed it into the content that you're teaching as you're going through. There's many opportunities, I think, for teachable moments for students to be able to help them to be more self-aware, or to self-manage, or to think about other people, even before a test, or coming back from recess or after a break, or those kind of things. So there's opportunities to be able to integrate SEL into the academic content.
And Lauren, in the chat, Lynn in our audience gave us a CASTLE link to the fundamentals of SEL. What does the research say? Which is another case to be made about the value of SEL.
I'm so grateful for all the people that are here, because now we know all these new folks that can help us in our mission. Thanks, Lynn. I appreciate it. Okay, so here, so I was just telling you, so here is the website that I promised you, and you can see this is a snapshot. The link is on the last slide, but it's easy. It's michigan.gov MDE-SEL. Lisa can put that in the chat to share with you. And on this website, our SEL website, you can find all of those resources that I've just alluded to. So if you are brave and bold, you can find that 62-page document with all of our competencies. You can also find the link to the school improvement framework guidance document. And in that guidance document, there is the appendices for the crosswalk that I just mentioned. There is a lesson planning tool. There is administrator prompts for staff meetings. There is self-reflection for teachers around SEL. So you name it, it is there. And also our contact information, you will be able to reach out to us that way as well. So here are, before I pass things back over to Lisa, there it is right there, you guys. I forgot, we put it on this slide. So
and we've shared it in the chat too.
Perfect. So we are covering all of our bases. So you'll see that's the SEL webpage. We also provided you the link to our school mental health site at the Department of Ed. There's also an SEL and COVID page that Lisa and I feverishly pulled together in March of last year. And then the information around the accelerated learning brief and video that Lisa mentioned at the beginning, that she is the star of the show. So you can find her there and more information about our brief. So that is the SEL song and dance for me. And I'm going to pass things back to Lisa to bring us home.
So as I think about what we've been talking about, you might be thinking PBIS is mature, SEL is mature. What's still emerging is this idea of how it is that we successfully integrate school-based mental health into a multi-tiered behavioral framework. And while the work is emerging, that doesn't mean we shouldn't share it or talk about it. The work is going on across the state. There are districts that are implementing interconnected systems framework because they think it's so terribly important, and doing really wonderful work to have blur the lines between the school and the community. At the state level, we felt like it was important to send a message that none of these practices should fall off the back of the truck, that we don't see PBIS or SEL as mutually exclusive, but actually they're very complementary, and that there's a positive redundancy. They layer goodness on top of one another within that system, and we get good effects. But because we have a principled approach towards emerging work, we thought we'd share our logic model with you. We got invited because Michigan is out in front as a national leader in social emotional learning, and that's because of Lauren. Michigan was one of the first states in the cohort that Castle convened to be able to look at statewide capacity for social emotional learning. Because of that, we were invited by CCSSO and Castle to participate in a community practice to look at the integration of MTSS, social emotional learning, and PBIS. And as a result of that work, Dr. Steve Goodman, Liz Newell, Lauren Kazee, and I worked together to come up with a way that we might begin to demonstrate how important it is to do the integration work. So we came up with a logic model, or a theory of action. Educators with an equity lens, that identity, agency, and belonging that Lauren mentioned, if those educators with an equity lens are provided guidance for integrating social emotional learning, PBIS, and school-based mental health within a multi-tiered framework. We've been talking about that for the last hour. The guidance stays true to the core features of each individual content area. A distinction you might think is that PBIS is about different settings in the school. SEL is more explicitly instructed in the classroom. But if we stay true to those core features, and if the guidance is tested out with stakeholder input and supported with tools and resources, then educators will be more effective and efficient in supporting the needs of all learners in an equitable manner. So that's our vision of why we think it's so terribly important. And we wanted to seize the moment to say, if we're really going to accelerate learning, then the basics that we provide of social emotional learning and positive behavior within a single system of delivery that enables school-based mental health, that's the vision that we think that will accelerate learning. Next slide, Lauren. So there are differentiations between positive behavior support and social emotional learning. And as I said, SEL is intended to be explicitly taught in class. So when Lauren did all the beautiful work of tying it to different content area, that classroom teacher has a hand on a crosswalk about how when they're teaching content, they're also weaving in their lesson design how it is that they'll support that social emotional competency. PBIS is making sure that any environment a child's in is safe, predictable, and reliable, and that when children demonstrate pro-social behavior, that they're able to do that. And then this integration would occur within MTSS. And you can see that people are looking for instruments and practices and a process of integrating, because we're all seeing how terribly important it is not to leave out school-based mental health. Next slide, please. Steve Goodman is the master of diagrams. He draws pictures, and all of a sudden we find words for how we might work together. We know that as we read in the literature how important it is to take a whole child approach. We know that social and emotional learning happens whether it's explicitly taught or not. We just don't know if it's intentionally taught or whether adults are looking at their own proficiency. That video gets me because in the part 1 of the video, the adults are so focused on the deficits within the children and not reflective about their own social and emotional learning proficiency. And in the second part of the video, they seem to have gotten that they're the positive antecedents that model and show how important that is. So we know the non-academic side has always been involved in quality instruction. Next slide.
I actually think these slides were backwards. I think this was supposed to go first.
So we've known there's a connection. What we're trying to do is pull out school-based mental health, positive behavior supports, and social and emotional learning as practices that will enhance the academic content. And it's a really active part of our chat today to be saying that the work is mature enough to be able to show that there's a fiscal return on investment. And as Lauren outlined, when these pieces work together, you're going to see positive outcomes for children. Next slide, please. So this is what we want to hear from you. We have about 5 to 10 minutes before our time is concluded. And what we're not sure about is the state of district environments, the degree to which there's integration already going on. So what we'd love you to do, and Beth is going to share your responses with us, is if you could tell us what your experience is. Is it A? So you would put an A in the chat, a B, a C, or a D. But so this is what we want to know. We want to hear from you. I'm not aware of educator efforts to align PBIS, SEL, or school-based mental health. That would be, if that's your experience, we'd like to know the degree to which that's occurring. B, I see some educators attempting to align PBIS with either SEL or school-based mental health. Or C, I notice an emergence of effort, as we've been talking about, to align and integrate PBIS with SEL, school-based mental health, into a single system. Or D, the Cadillac of the environments that we hope for all of you, I've seen an example of a single system of delivery that aligns and integrates PBIS, SEL, and school-based mental health. If you could take a minute and type in the chat whether you find yourself noticing that you're in an environment that's more like A, like B, like C, or like D. So it looks like some people are seeing B, educators are attempting to align PBIS with SEL or school-based mental health. looks like the preponderance of our participants, Lauren, are noticing that some alignment for B is occurring.
That's great.
There are a few C's in that the single system, that the non-example is co-location. We don't want parallel play. We want school-based mental health, PBIS, and SEL to be able to be working together and inform one another. There is someone who is living in the gold standard of what we're looking for. That would be D, a single system of delivery that aligns and integrates.
Call us. So this is it. Wrap up and closing remarks. If there's any questions, I can stop. Oh, here's how to find us. If you want to jot that down really quickly, or we can throw that in the chat. I want to stop sharing so I can see. If there's any remaining questions, we've got 10 minutes.
Lauren, I wonder while we wait for people to think about their questions, if you would talk about the Michigan virtual online modules that anyone can take in. I don't know if it's published yet, but there was some work on MTSS. Is that published and available?
So yes, it is. Thanks for asking it. It's funny because I'm actually at Michigan Virtual right now in Lansing. That's the conference room that I'm in. So yes, there are 9 SEL modules that are related, that are available to all educators at Michigan Virtual that they are housing. The first one is the one that we've been pushing for a long time, which is the Introduction to SEL. So it's a lot more information than what we provided to you today. You can get sketches. It's free. We would love for you to take it because there are like 26% of our educators in the state of Michigan have taken it already. So jump in, peer pressure, join the club. And then over the summer, I developed 4 new modules with Michigan Virtual. And one of them is on this very topic that Leisa and I have been presenting on today. So it is SEL and MTSS and PBIS and integrating, and Dr. Goodman and Liz Newell and Leisa also gave input into that course. So that is online, available like 2 hours, I think. So if you go to Michigan Virtual, you'll be able to find their suite of SEL courses, and that is one of them. Oh, I'm glad our team changed. Thank you. I love you for saying that. And now I'll be the tired person.
Oh, that's wonderful. I share the resources on the MDE website with the undergrads at their introductory course on students with disabilities. They build a toolkit of important resources so they can keep going back. My MTSS is great.
Oh, thanks. So happy to hear that. That's great. Thank you for joining us today. Aw, thank you. Find out who that was. I owe them a coffee.
Vanetta.
Thank you. Thanks, Vanetta. Well, if there's nothing else, Beth, we can call it a day.
We'd like to thank Luke, our stage manager, for bringing his expertise to the table when we needed him most for that video to play. And I'd really love to shout out a big thank you to Beth Hill, who got us ready and prepared for this. As you can tell, we were dependent on Beth to make sure that she shared your voice with us, and we really appreciated your help.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beth. Thanks for being here with us, everyone.
Happy today.
Happy evening. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.